All right, so the speech finally mercifully ended. So there's, look, there's a little bit of an awkward transition there because at 10:30 we had to drop from a lot of our platforms because of pre-agreed to situation. But Trump was wrapping up with the tall summits and the rocky beaches, etc., and he's now done. And so we're going to now get into obviously our analysis of that. But as soon as you're gonna have to okay. And so as soon as Stacey Abrams starts giving the Democratic rebuttal, we will go to it. As soon as Bernie Sanders starts giving his rebuttal, we will go to it. So in this speech that Donald Trump just gave in the State of the Union, I'll surprise you by saying in the beginning that there were a number of instances where we agreed with him and gave him credit for saying things that were true, like the jobs numbers were better than expected recently and were strong. That I said as we were doing the live play-by-play that was a rare situation where he didn't make something up. That was actually true. They did do criminal justice reform and it was bipartisan. That was good. He called out Alice Johnson, who he had commuted her sentence. She'd been serving in prison for far too long unjustly, so that was a good moment there. He talked about the First Step Act, that was also good legislation, and withdrawing from Afghanistan and Syria. Most progressives agree with that. We agree with that here. So I want to give credit to Trump on all the things that we did agree with and things that were true. Now, of course, it's Trump. So we move on to the things that he said that were totally not true, which unfortunately dominated, and demagoguery. So when he started talking about drug prices, for example, and saying that they're now lower than they have been, that is not true. And he said he has taken great action on that, not remotely true. He said during the campaign that he would get the government to negotiate drug prices, and he has not. That was another broken campaign promise. That was a campaign promise we agreed with. By the way, another campaign promise he said is that we would have universal health care coverage. That has also not obviously been delivered. He never intended to deliver it. He talked about how he's trying to protect pre-existing conditions. That is also not true. The Republican proposals would have, some of the proposals would have taken away coverage for pre-existing conditions. So almost everything he said on the healthcare issue was not remotely true. He then talked about how some Democrats are pushing for open borders. No one is pushing for open borders. There's a significant disagreement about how to do border security, including whether we should waste money on a wall or not. And obviously Republicans think that it would be a great way to spend money, or some Republicans think that, but no one's advocating for open borders. That's not true at all. And then he did the demagoguery about people who were killed by undocumented immigrants. And yes, that's true. That he showed one family whose parents, or in some of their cases, grandparents, great-grandparents, this lovely old couple had been killed by undocumented immigrants, but we could show you just as many people who have been killed by right-wing terrorists. In fact, a lot more people that have been killed by right-wing terrorists in this country. And then he brought on, and it was wonderful to see a survivor of Tree of Life Synagogue, who had also been a Holocaust survivor, is hear his story, hear the story of the person who rushed in and helped to save those folks and got the assailant in that case. But what he did not mention was that the shooter was a right-wing terrorist who thought the Jews were financing the caravan, and the caravan was so dangerous that he had to do something about those dastardly Jews who were financing it. Who also talks about the caravan and how dangerous it is? It's Donald Trump. Who talks about the global financial elites that are financing things secretly? Trump did during the campaign. So who said after neo-Nazis chanted, "The Jews will not replace us" in Charlottesville? Well, there are good people on that side. So although the stories about the survivors of the Tree of Life Synagogue were wonderful and moving, they were used in the most crass political way to try to show that Donald Trump has empathy for a side that he has shown no empathy for. And in fact, has unfortunately instigated a lot of the violence that we now see through those attacks, whether it's right-wing terrorists in Parkland that did the shooting in the high school there, the shooting at the yoga studio in Tallahassee, and obviously at the synagogue in Pittsburgh. So a mixed bag overall, but one theme that I want to go back to is what he talked about in bringing unity. He emphasized that in the beginning. Is he genuine about that? No, because later he would go on to defame and lie about the Democrats in the chamber. And his main reason for calling for unity was so that they will not do what he called, quote, partisan investigations of himself. Okay, so that is the basic gist of the speech there. Your guys' thoughts on the speech?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what you said was correct. There was a mixed bag. It was better than can be expected because he did talk about criminal justice reform and getting out of Syria and Afghanistan, which I think things we can all empathize with and agree with policy-wise. But the demagoguery about immigration and immigrants was beyond the pale. I don't know why every Democrat doesn't scream this from the rooftops, but study after study has shown that illegal immigrants or people who are here in the country illegally commit crime across the board at a much lower rate than the rest of the population, a significantly lower rate. So it's all manufactured fear-mongering. There is no statistical evidence to back up what he's saying, as well as the talking points he throws out there about drugs coming over the border. There's no statistical evidence to show that a wall would help. Most illegal immigrants come through overstaying their visas. It's filled with factual inaccuracies and lies in order to make his white base feel afraid.
And the drugs that come over the border generally are driven through ports of entry. They're not carried by people with cantaloupe calves or anything like that. My favorite standouts from a speech that otherwise appeared to be an attempt to make Trump seem reasonable again were the claim that you highlighted that the economy will be wrecked if the president is investigated for corruption, which is totally the sort of level-headed argument you make if you believe that that investigation will inevitably absolve you of all wrongdoing. You'd totally do that. And then the other is this theory that if Donald Trump had not won the 2016 election, we would be in a nuclear holocaust right now, and we would all be dead. That is a bold claim to make with no evidence.
Yeah, he said that in regards to North Korea, that we would most likely be at war if he had been elected. No one else believes that, it's obviously a very complicated situation. You can say, hey, listen, I'm pursuing peace negotiations and that's a good thing. And if you left it at that, we would mostly agree. You've botched those negotiations, that's a separate topic. But the idea that if you hadn't done those, that we would by definition be in a war with North Korea is preposterous.
And he also, at the beginning of his presidency, he tried to, I don't even remember the figure, but increase our nuclear arsenal by X-fold, and it was 10X. Such a 10X. Yeah, it was such a preposterous figure that he got laughed at. John Kelly, I believe, laughed in his face and said, this guy's an idiot, or whoever it was. So it's not like he's some sort of dove. He has fallen into peace negotiations basically by accident, in my view.
Yeah. So. Everyone was incredulous in that meeting, and Tillerson, who was the Secretary of State at that point, after the meeting walked out and famously called him an effing moron.
That was it, yeah.
And when that got back to Trump later in one of the billion leaks in his administration, that's partly what led him to eventually part ways with Rex Tillerson. But he talked about foolish wars and how we shouldn't be in them anymore. Great, agreed. Then he talked about how we're gonna go after Iran. Well, that would be the most foolish war of all. We had a perfectly good peace treaty with them, which that you now have ruined and you're instigating. Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.